live inside a mind that lies to you. Every thought, every certainty you cling to could be a trick, a quiet delusion whispering, "You are right. You are safe. You know who you are." But what if none of that is true? What if the you've defended your whole life is nothing more than a mask, a fragile construct built from fear, memory, and the desperate need to belong? Carl Jung called this the false self, the persona, the costume you wear to survive the world. And beneath it waits the shadow, the version of you that watches from the dark corners of your unconscious, waiting for the day you finally see it. This is not comfort. This is confrontation. The darkness of delusion isn't outside you. It's within you. And if you dare to face it, you will find something terrifying and magnificent. Because once you see through the illusion, you cannot be touched again. Comment below, "I am not my illusion." Say it now, let it echo. Because once we begin, there's no turning back. Welcome to the darkness of delusion and the self, in the light of Carl Jung. Number 1, the illusion begins. You've been taught to trust your mind, but what if your mind was never loyal to you? Every conviction, every belief, every emotional reflex is part of a web your psyche built to protect itself from truth. Carl Jung believed the greatest danger to humanity was not ignorance, but the illusion of knowing. Delusion begins quietly. It starts when you tell yourself, "I'm fine," when you hide your pain behind purpose, when you mistake control for strength. You construct a reality that feels safe, predictable, and call it identity. But beneath that identity, something moves, something you buried under years of pretending to be normal. This is the sickness Jung called psychic blindness. When the ego convinces you that you are awake while you're still dreaming. You are not living, you're performing. You are not thinking, you're defending. Your emotions are soldiers, guarding a fragile lie called you. Every delusion starts as a protection mechanism. It promises comfort, but feeds decay. The false self thrives on applause, but dies in silence. That's why you fear stillness, because silence is the sound of truth knocking. Jung warned that the unconscious will surface, one way or another. If you repress it, it will break through in chaos, in obsession, in sleepless nights that whisper your hidden truth. The world you see is a projection of your own disowned parts. The light you admire and the darkness you condemn both belong to you. The illusion is not out there. It's the reflection staring back. The moment you question that reflection, the cracks begin to form. And through those cracks, light begins to bleed. You are not your job. You are not your name. You are not even your thoughts. You are the watcher, the silent observer beneath all masks. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That fate ends here. You are now standing at the edge of your own psyche, staring into the black water of your delusion. Breathe, look deeper, let the illusion dissolve. Comment below, "I see through the false self." Let it be your first act of rebellion against the mind that lied to you. Because from here, the descent begins. Number 2, the birth of the false self. The false self wasn't born in a single moment. It was assembled piece by piece. The day you first felt that being yourself was not enough. You were told to smile when you wanted to scream, to obey when you wanted to question, to fit in when your soul wanted to stand alone. And so, you began to fracture. Carl Jung called this process the creation of the persona, the mask the ego builds to survive the world. It's a masterpiece of deception, a self polished by approval and sculpted by fear. You became what others needed, not what you were meant to be. You learned to perform emotions, to calculate your honesty, to hide your chaos behind politeness. Every "I'm fine" became another brick in the wall between you and your truth. But here's the irony. The more perfectly your persona forms, the further you drift from your soul. Jung warned that the false self offers temporary protection, but eternal emptiness. You may achieve admiration, validation, even success. Yet inside, something feels missing. That hollow ache isn't failure. It's your real self suffocating beneath layers of illusion. The false self thrives on image. It feeds on how you are seen, not who you are. That's why silence terrifies it, why solitude feels like death. Because in stillness, the mask begins to slip, and the real self stirs beneath it. The mind fights back, whispering distractions, fears, addictions, anything to keep the illusion alive. But no mask can survive forever. Life has a cruel mercy. It will send you the exact situations needed to shatter the persona. Betrayal, loss, rejection. These are not punishments, they are mirrors. Each one strips a layer of delusion until you finally meet the version of yourself that never needed approval to exist. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to reach that truth, you must die symbolically. The false self must burn. You must allow the death of your own disguise. Look in the mirror and see not what you show the world, but what hides behind your eyes." Comment below, "I am more than my mask." Say it with defiance, because from here, you begin to confront the darkness you've hidden from. The part of you Jung called the shadow. Number 3, the shadow emerges. You've worn your mask for so long that the darkness beneath it has learned to breathe on its own. This is the shadow, the side of you that carries everything you refuse to face. Your rage, envy, shame, hunger, weakness, brilliance. Carl Jung warned that the more you deny the shadow, the darker it becomes. It doesn't disappear, it waits. It watches from the corners of your mind, feeding on repression. Every time you suppress your truth, it grows teeth. Every time you lie to protect your image, it sharpens its claws. The shadow is not evil, it is exiled power. It is your unclaimed truth, twisted by neglect. You see it in others and hate it, never realizing that what disgusts you is simply your own reflection wearing another face. You call them arrogant, but it's your own buried pride. You call them weak, but it's your own unhealed wound. This is the law of projection. What you reject within yourself, you will meet in the world. Jung called it the moral problem of our age, the refusal to take responsibility for our own darkness. You cannot destroy the shadow, you must integrate it. To do that, you must look directly at it, without fear, without judgment. The moment you name your darkness, it loses its control. What you repress controls you. What you confront transforms you. Think of every nightmare, every burst of anger, every quiet moment of jealousy. These are signals, not sins. They are the voice of the forgotten self calling you home. The shadow does not want to harm you. It wants to be seen. When you look at it with awareness instead of hatred, it begins to dissolve back into wholeness. That's when real power begins to surface, the kind that no one can take from you. Because once you own your shadow, the world can no longer use it against you. The shame that once crushed you becomes fuel for understanding. The fear that once paralyzed you becomes intuition. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So look inward, even if it terrifies you. Comment below, "I embrace my shadow." Say it, own it, and feel the ground shift beneath you, because the shadow is not your enemy. It is your evolution in disguise. Number 4, the mirror of projection. The world is your mirror, and it never lies. Every person you love, everyone you despise, every emotion they awaken within you, these are reflections of your own unconscious. Carl Jung called this process projection, the mind's desperate attempt to escape itself. You accuse others of pride because you fear your own. You despise liars because you lie to yourself every day. You admire strength because a fragment of you remembers that power once belonged to you. The ego can't bear to face its shadow, so it casts it outward, painting the world in symbols of its own denial. This is why people repeat the same toxic relationships, attract the same pain, live the same lessons, because the soul will keep showing you what you refuse to see. Every encounter is a confrontation with your unseen self. The more violently you react, the closer you are to the truth. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The outer world is not against you, it's revealing you. Every enemy you name is a messenger sent by your unconscious, holding a mirror to your blindness. You don't need to fix the reflection, you must face the source. Projection keeps you trapped in illusion because it convinces you the problem is out there. The more you point fingers, the more power you surrender. But when you turn that finger inward, something cracks. The illusion of separateness. You begin to see that every judgment, every resentment is energy begging to return home. That's when healing begins. You reclaim your fragments, one mirror at a time, until the world stops looking like an enemy and begins to look like your teacher. The more mirrors you clean, the clearer your reflection becomes. The clearer it becomes, the less control the illusion has. You begin to see others not as threats, but as extensions of your own psyche, moving through the same labyrinth of fear and longing. When you understand this, judgment dies and awareness is born. You can no longer be manipulated by hate, by shame, by noise, because you've met their source. The mirror becomes pure, and so do you. Comment below, "I own my reflection." Say it as a declaration, because the moment you stop projecting, the world stops controlling you, and that's when the war within truly begins. Number 5, the war within. This is where it begins to hurt. The moment awareness pierces illusion, the psyche begins its civil war. The ego resists surrender, the shadow demands to be seen, and the self, the deeper eternal core of you, stands in the crossfire. Carl Jung called this conflict the enantiodromia, the natural swing from one extreme to its opposite. You've lived your life on one side of truth. Now the pendulum returns with force. Everything you denied comes rushing back, not to punish you, but to balance you. You'll feel it as restlessness, rage, confusion, maybe even despair. That's the ego dying, one illusion at a time. It screams because it knows it's losing control. And you, standing between the fragments, will be tempted to run back to comfort, to rebuild your old self. Don't. That comfort is decay disguised as peace. This war within is sacred. It's the battlefield of transformation. Jung wrote that the psyche must face the tension of opposites for individuation to occur. You cannot reach wholeness without walking through contradiction. You will question your faith, your love, your memories. You will watch every identity you've built begin to crumble. But let it. You were never those things. You only thought you were. The false self cannot coexist with truth. When the mask dissolves, raw consciousness stands naked, vulnerable, luminous, real. That is where the self begins to breathe again. You'll feel both death and rebirth happening at once. The death of illusion, the rebirth of authenticity. The mind will call it madness, but Jung saw it as initiation, the descent into chaos that precedes order. Every scream from your ego is a sign that the truth is winning. The moment you stop resisting pain and start listening to it, it transforms into wisdom. The war isn't to destroy your darkness. It's to unite it with your light. Integration, not annihilation, is the goal. You're not here to escape suffering. You're here to understand it. When you stop running from the storm, you realize it was always made of your own breath. Comment below, "I am not afraid of my storm." Let that phrase be your weapon. The war within is brutal, yes, but necessary. Because the moment you accept your inner conflict, you become something the world cannot touch. A soul that bleeds truth and calls it freedom. Number 6, breaking the persona. You've worn your mask for so long that you've forgotten what your real face feels like. The persona, that polished, smiling, socially acceptable version of you, is beginning to fracture. You can hear the cracks forming in the silence. Carl Jung warned that the persona, though necessary, becomes a prison when you mistake it for your soul. It was meant to protect you, not replace you. But you've worn it through every friendship, every job, every hollow conversation that demanded you to be fine. You've fed it praise, fear, approval, until it became stronger than the truth beneath it. But now the mask is crumbling, and every fragment cuts your skin as it falls. This is not destruction, this is exposure. The false self cannot coexist with the real one. You will feel naked, exposed, unguarded. You will want to retreat into the comfort of pretending. Don't. This is where authenticity is born. Jung called it the dissolution of the persona. the sacred undoing before rebirth. Every mask you remove reveals another layer of forgotten self. The child who dreamed, the rebel who questioned, the lover who felt everything too deeply. You've silenced these voices to be accepted. Now they are returning, not to destroy you, but to remind you who you were before you began performing. The persona whispers, they won't love the real you. But that's the point. You are not here to be loved for a lie. You are here to live without needing permission. The death of the persona feels like loss, but it's liberation disguised as pain. Beneath the ashes of identity, you'll find something ancient, the self that never needed validation to exist. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once you do, terror transforms into strength, because when you no longer fear being seen, you become untouchable. The world can no longer manipulate a soul that refuses to wear masks. You become presence itself, raw, unfiltered, alive. Comment below, I am done pretending. Say it as if you're tearing a chain from your throat, because this is the moment you stop being a reflection and start becoming real. From here, you descend even deeper, past persona, past ego, into the abyss where the unconscious waits to reveal its final truth. Number 7, descent into the unconscious. This is the part no one warns you about, the descent. When the mask breaks and the ego weakens, you fall, not in defeat, but in depth. Carl Jung called it the night sea journey, the soul's necessary plunge into its own abyss. The unconscious isn't darkness because it's evil. It's darkness because it's unexplored. Down here, logic bends, time dissolves. You begin to meet the forgotten gods of your own psyche, the archetypes, the primordial patterns that shape every dream, every fear, every impulse you've ever had. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the shadow, the self. They all rise like ghosts, not to haunt you, but to remind you that you are more than the surface mind that pretends to be in control. Every archetype is a mirror, every image a message from the depths. You may see visions, face memories, long buried, or feel a silence so heavy it sounds alive. Don't run. This is not madness. This is revelation. The descent strips away all illusions of control. You'll realize how small your conscious mind truly is, a thin island floating on an ocean of vast, ancient intelligence. Jung wrote, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Down here, you awaken. You learn that fear is a compass, not an enemy. It points to the place where your greatest power hides. The unconscious will test you, not with monsters, but with mirrors. It will show you everything you've denied, then ask, will you integrate or run again? You'll feel yourself dissolve, as if your identity is melting into something infinite. And it is. This is ego death, not the end of self, but its purification. You will emerge changed, unable to return to the old version of you, because that version never truly existed. The descent is not a fall from grace, it's a surrender to truth. Every fear you face here becomes a torch. Every tear becomes a map. Comment below, I descend to rise. Say it softly, like a spell, because you are now walking through the corridors of your own soul. And when you reach the bottom, you'll understand. The darkness was never the enemy. It was your birthplace. Number 8, death of delusion. There comes a moment in every descent when illusion begins to rot. The lies you've lived by no longer hold their shape. The narratives that once gave you meaning collapse into dust. This is the death of delusion, the crucifixion of the false mind. Carl Jung called it a psychic death, the necessary annihilation of everything unreal, so that what is eternal can live. You'll feel it like grief, because it is grief. The mourning of who you thought you were. Every attachment, every identity, every illusion of control burns away in this fire. You can't bargain with it. You can't escape it. You can only surrender. This is the point where the ego dies screaming, and the soul breathes for the first time. You will feel empty, disoriented, weightless. But that emptiness is sacred. It's the silence after the storm, the void before creation, the delusions that once ruled you. I am this, I need that. They define me, dissolve into nothing. And from that nothing, something vast begins to emerge. Awareness without identity, presence without pretense. Jung said that transformation feels like death because the psyche must destroy its own prisons before it can be free. The mind that believed in separation begins to fade, and unity whispers from the void. You realize that the self was never lost. It was simply buried under the noise of illusion. When delusion dies, perception clears. You see people not as enemies or saviors, but as mirrors reflecting fragments of the same light. You stop searching for meaning because you become meaning itself. The world no longer deceives you, it reveals you. This is not enlightenment. It's truth stripped naked, raw, and unspectacular. And yet, it's everything. Comment below, my delusion dies, my truth lives. Feel it vibrate through your chest as you speak it. The death of delusion is not the end of you. It's the beginning of your sovereignty. You no longer cling to validation because you are no longer a construct that needs to be seen. You've stepped beyond illusion's reach into the silence where only the real can breathe. The mind has surrendered. The self has awakened. And from this stillness, the rebirth begins. Number 9, the rebirth of the self. From the ashes of illusion, something ancient stirs. Not the ego, not the persona, but the self, the real center of your being, the one that existed before you learned to hide. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the uniting of the conscious and the unconscious into a single living truth. You're no longer the mask, nor the voice that narrated the mask. You've become the silence that holds them both. In this silence, you sense a stillness that doesn't depend on validation, a peace that doesn't fear chaos. You realize that everything you rejected, every shadow you cursed, was part of your design. You are the paradox, both dark and light, broken and whole, dying and eternal. This is not a spiritual high, it's a grounded awakening. You no longer crave escape because you see that reality itself was never your enemy. Your resistance was. Jung believed that rebirth is not about becoming something new, but remembering what was never lost. The self doesn't fight, it integrates. It doesn't seek power, it embodies it. You begin to live with quiet precision, your words fewer, your presence heavier, your eyes carrying both empathy and fire. People will feel the difference. They'll sense that something in you cannot be shaken anymore. You'll stop chasing meaning because your life will start being meaning. This is the golden moment when the fragments of your psyche align, when shadow and light bow to one another, no longer enemies but reflections of the same consciousness. You feel everything yet are attached to nothing. You love without possession, speak without fear, and move through chaos like calm water. Jung said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." You found that order within yourself. The war's over. The delusion is dead. You are reborn, not as someone new but as someone whole. Comment below, I am the self reborn. Let it be your vow, whispered from the depths of your new awareness. Because from this point onward, you don't just live, you embody truth. And the self, once awakened, never sleeps again. Number 10, becoming untouchable. You've walked through illusion, shadow, chaos, and death, and now you stand in stillness. You are no longer the fragmented self that begged for meaning. You are the center that creates it. This is what Carl Jung called the realization of the self, the point where opposites reconcile, where consciousness and the unconscious no longer wage war, but hold hands in quiet authority. You have become untouchable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because pain no longer defines you. You see now that every wound was an initiation, every betrayal a mirror, every fall a form of grace. You don't resist life anymore. You move with it. There's no need to defend your identity because truth needs no defense. When people misunderstand you, you smile. When they project their darkness onto you, you see their pain, not their attack. You have transcended reaction. Jung said that the goal is not perfection, but wholeness. And wholeness is immune to manipulation. It can be scarred, but never shattered. The world hasn't changed. You have. The chaos still swirls, but you have become the eye of the storm, silent and sovereign. You no longer chase love, success, or validation. They orbit naturally around the gravity of your authenticity. You've stopped explaining yourself to those committed to their illusions, because you remember when you were trapped in yours. That memory breeds compassion, not superiority. This is mastery, not of others, but of self. You've integrated your shadow, dissolved your masks, embraced your pain, and found power in vulnerability. You have nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Comment below, "I am untouchable." Say it like a seal over your transformation, because now you understand. Being untouchable doesn't mean being invincible, it means being real. No illusion can break what no longer clings to illusion. You walk through the world differently now, calm, observant, dangerous in your peace, and when others meet your gaze, they won't see arrogance. They'll see reflection. You've become what Jung described as the self-made conscious, a human being who has met both heaven and hell within and learned to call them home. You've seen the darkness of delusion and walked through it into light. And now your awakening begins. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you've just stepped beyond illusion and the world needs to hear your silence.